Damascus is denying media claims about an unprecedented chemical weapons attack and massacre just outside Damascus. The Saudi-owned media network al-Arabiya citing a Syrian rebel group now claiming that hundreds of people have been killed in an unconfirmed attack. All this just days after UN inspectors arrived in Syria to probe earlier reports of chemical killings. Our correspondent in the region, Paula Slier, has details.
It is unconfirmed, but the initial report suggests that the attack was on rebel-held areas of eastern Damascus. According to al-Arabiya, which is a Saudi Arabian network, activists at the Syrian Revolutionary Command Council say that regime fighter jets, so these are forces loyal to the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, were flying over the area after a bombardment using chemical agents. The numbers are not clear. Al-Arabiya is reporting that more than 600 people have been killed, but other mainstream networks say dozens have died. Now, we have spoken to the information minister. We've also spoken with people living not far from this area, and none of them have confirmed the attack. But as you can well imagine, the reports are creating a massive storm on social media, and everyone is discussing this. Al-Arabiya, as I mentioned, is Saudi Arabia's network, and Saudi Arabia has its own agenda inside Syria. It is anti the President Bashar al-Assad, and so it is possible that these reports are a way of pushing Saudi Arabia's agenda against Assad. The timing certainly is significant. It comes at a time when United Nations inspectors have come to Syria to conduct a probe into the use of chemical weapons. The situation regarding chemical weapons is very unclear. The United Nations says that it has received up to 13 reports of usage of chemical weapons inside Syria, one of those reports coming from the Damascus regime, and the rest coming mainly from the United Kingdom, France, and the United States. Both sides of the conflict, both the rebels and the government, have denied using any kind of chemical weaponry. But back in May, the United Nations independent investigator Carla de Ponta said that there was strong suspicions that the rebels have been using the illegal sarin gas. For months, unverified video clips showing purported victims of chemical weapon, these victims choking, foaming at the mouth and displaying other possible symptoms of chemical usage in Syria, have been making their way onto YouTube. Some journalists have also allegedly interviewed victims of chemical attacks inside Syria. Of course, each side in the conflict has accused the other of using chemical weapons, each side having its own agenda. And outside nations backing the government or the rebels have also gotten involved, generally backing their allies' version of events. So all of this really has become part of political manipulation. President Obama has declared that if there is any proof that chemical weapons have been used, this would be a red line that would trigger American involvement inside Syria.
And just a very short while ago, I spoke to William Engdahl, a geopolitical analyst and author of Myths, Lies and Oil Wars. He believes the report is nothing short of an anti-Assad media campaign.
The Syrian government, the Assad government, has absolutely nothing to gain by using chemical weapons, and they know that. I think the key point here is the point that Obama made this very unfortunate statement, pinning himself in, that if proof of chemical weapon use by the government is demonstrated, that's the red line for U.S. military involvement, no-fly zone, the whole thing. And this has become now the line in the sand issue between war and not war on the side of the U.S. and NATO in Syria. So it's no surprise that the Saudis, who are quite avid backers of a regime change, are floating this in their news media to try to create the impression, I think, of a gas attack by the Assad government.
That of the unconfirmed report of an unprecedented chemical attack near Damascus in Syria. The UK is demanding the issues immediately taken to the UN Security Council, while the Arab League says the incident should be investigated at once. And let's now talk more about this with reporter and international affairs analyst Patrick Henningsen. Patrick, welcome to RT. Good to have you with us. All we have now, unconfirmed reports, but media sources quote Syrian rebels, and they put the number of killed to more than 1,000 now. Do you think they are a reliable source? And if it is confirmed the attack had taken place, do you think that the Syrian army could have carried out it?
Yeah, this is a very strange situation we find ourselves in here, where the Washington and London are putting the burden of proof on the Assad government in Damascus, when in fact the burden of proof should be on the accusers of this particular event. There's no evidence to suggest exactly what happened. We only have reports from, like you said, opposition activists in Damascus, so we don't know what happened and we don't know how it happened. And until you discern those two things, it's going to be very difficult to jump to conclusions. Anything to this point is speculation.
Indeed, but would the Assad government resort to such an attack knowing the UN investigators are in the country right now?
Well, it's funny. The Reuters report came out saying, obviously, that they cannot confirm independently these events. And Jane's International also reported to Reuters that it doesn't make any sense for the Syrian government to deploy a chemical weapon only miles away from the very hotel that the UN weapons inspectors have booked into only a few days ago. So they see this as a distraction. And of course, if we look at the history of this particular region, the Ghouta region, where the attack is said to take place, is very active with the al-Nusra front, and they've also been implicated in using makeshift chlorine bombs in Aleppo back in March. So there's a track record there. The evidence, unfortunately, does not stack up with these present claims of the Syrian government perpetrating these attacks.
Yeah, but it's still clear why fingers are being pointed at the government, at the Syrian government, because this is the government which has chemical weapons, don't they?
Yes, well, again, this is all, to this point, innuendo. This is why the UN team is in Damascus to investigate these claims. Unfortunately, Washington and London and Paris drew a red line last year in 2012 that said if any side deploys chemical weapons, then that will be the pretext for a military intervention, either by NATO or some sort of coalition force backed by a UN resolution. And of course, who benefits from a chemical attack in Syria? Well, the opposition benefits. It's quite obvious. The Syrian government does not benefit. The opposition benefits because this will be the key to unlock the airstrikes and bombing campaign over Syria a la Libya. The opposition would like a Libyan-style coalition with NATO in order to force the regime out of power in Damascus. So they clearly benefit from any reports of a chemical attack in Syria.
And Al-Arabiya puts the number of killed at more than 600, while other mainstream media talk about just dozens of victims. Why is there such a difference?
Well, I believe you have to also consider the source. I believe Al-Arabiya has certain affiliations with certain Gulf states who might also have an interest in this particular conflict already. So you might see more exaggerated reports on certain sides. But again, there's no independent verification. This is simply anecdotal and innuendo to this point. So we can't, you know, it's pure speculation exactly what has happened.
Sure.
So, but the timing of it is very suspect, I have to say.
Indeed. All right. Reporter and international affairs analyst Patrick Henningsen. Patrick, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.